Good evening, family. You now tuned in to another version of The Journey 2020. And we're pleased and proud to present to you our show this evening, which will focus in on education, HBCUs, and jobs. And tonight we have some distinguished guests with us that I'll introduce in a minute or two. But I just want to tell you, if this is your first view of The Journey 2020, that The Journey is about providing information, education, and a little fun as we talk about topics of concern to you, to me, and to the community. My name is Dr. John Robertson. I'm a clinical psychologist, and my interest is giving the community what I feel may be helpful and useful in our growth and in our prosperity. And I'd like to also introduce you to our co-producer, and I'm going to stop calling him my partner in crime because I think we're doing much more than a little criminal activity here, but hopefully some activity that is going to give the community what it needs to grow beyond where it is. So, Charles, you want to take it now?
Well, happy to, and welcome everyone. Our guest today, I've been working with Oreen and actually I've done a lot of projects with her. And we're going to talk with the president from the Urban League, but we're going to find out today that I used to be heavily involved with the Urban League some time ago when I used to work with the county with Orange TV. I was on probably about 3 of their youth boards and worked very heavily with the New Lights, and we did a lot of things together. I had them on my summits, and some of the New Lights actually went through my youth program teaching them video production, and I can kind of pat myself on the back because what happened was once they went through the video production part of it, they actually won a national award. And so on and so forth. So that was a lot of fun. So I'm happy to hear about what else is going on in the Urban League as well. And of course, we're going to talk about the MEAC SWAC and the football game that's going on. So we can talk about the Black college experience, which I can share as well.
Got to. And just in case we have any viewers that were involved in the Urban League back then, you may not recognize Charles because I think he had a little bit more hair then. And I also want to say I had also worked for the Urban League when I was in New York City, involved in a youth project.
Right.
And I won't tell you about my experiences there because we had a very controversial director who had very short staff meetings. Right. Because he would pull out a very convincing weapon that I won't indicate what it was, and say, if y'all don't make a decision in 5 minutes, I'm ending this meeting. Right. We had some of the most decisive meetings and shortest meetings that I can think of. And Mr. Braswell, please don't take that as a method for your meetings here in Orlando. Okay.
But I'm sorry, but I just want to say again that I learned so much about what they do. I'm pretty sure he's going to tell us as well. But it's endless. It's very much needed. And I think at the time, I may have talked with you and you were talking about working more so well, he'll probably talking about more about working with the area with Tampa, and I guess combining the area. And I guess at that point maybe you're thinking about changing the name. Mm-hmm. Speaking of it, one of my best friends just one of the persons that I used to work with talking about, and I was asking about you, Shelly, today. So come on, Shelly, come on. That's okay. Come on. Shelly and I, she can tell you that we've done a lot of stuff together in the past.
Welcome. Okay.
Want to join us?
Yes.
All right. The shuttle has launched.
Okay.
All right. I'd like to introduce you to a few of our guests, and to my extreme right is Mr. Ali Braswell. And Mr. Braswell is the president of the Metro Orlando Urban League. And in his background, I just happened to look at his website, I found out that he's also an author of a motivational self-help book. And I found out that by Googling his name, you can find the book and also other information about Mr. Braswell. So, because we have a very short time, I'm going to leave it like that and let Mr. Braswell, when we go further into our program, to introduce some of his extensive and very deep background. Beside him is someone who I like to call friend, because she has so much energy that every time I come into contact with her, if I'm tired, I can just come close and I get a little energy boost that's here. And again, the individual I'm talking about is Ms. Oreen Boyd. And Oreen, in looking at her bio, describes herself as just an ordinary woman. And I have to tell you, Oreen, you didn't tell the truth.
I'm sorry. Phenomenal.
She is anything else. And absolutely, she is a phenomenal woman. In addition to her own nonprofit, the Can Do, club, she also, and a lot of her contact that I have with her is through one of the premier health prevention events in the area, and I would dare say probably in the country.
I would say so.
And that is the African American Men's Health Summit.
Yes.
And that is an event annually that we're over 2,500,
Yes.
2,500 African American men get up and are in the Orange County Convention Center
at 7
in the morning.
Yes.
With that free breakfast too.
Hey,
That
that's
free
it.
breakfast,
That's
absolutely.
it. I'm telling you. But I'm impressed. I have not seen brothers get up
That early.
On a Saturday.
That
on a
many.
Saturday for anything.
Absolutely.
You know. And it is truly through the efforts of Oreen and the large committee. It is really a community effort.
It really is.
But again, it tells you something about the leadership. And again, I'm not going to attribute that to it coming from the background of an HBCU graduate, but there must be something to do with it. Okay.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
I'm not an HBCU alum,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to that. And beside her is Miss Shelley Minnis. And Ms. Minnis also is involved with the Urban League. And because this was our drop-in guest, I'm going to ask Shelley to just introduce herself very briefly.
Well, again, I'm Shelley Ann Minnis. I have been with the Central Florida Urban League for 12 years now. So that's how far Charles and I go back. He's been involved with our youth programs and just many of the different programs that we've had. So he's always been a strong supporter. So I am here for you, Charles.
Yes.
One of the things I wanted to do is to go back to Mr. Braswell. As many of you know, this is the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, otherwise known as the March for Jobs and Freedom. And I will not forget, and I hope many of our viewers won't forget, that the Urban League, and particularly the president of the Urban League at the time, Whitney Young, was one of what was then called the Big Six, the leadership of the civil rights movement, and one of the individuals that pushed the agenda to make sure that that contained an agenda about jobs. And with that history, I think that the Urban League has continued in that path. And I'd like Mr. Braswell for you as a executive director, president of the Urban League, to talk a little bit about that Urban League's role historically as it relates to the black community and where it is now.
Well, I thank you again for having me on the show, and I apologize for running at the last minute, Charles, but I did beat Miss Minnis. But, you know, historically, when you think about what Whitney did and his vision, Whitney and Young actually changed the movement. with the Urban League movement around economic growth and jobs. And we take a page out of his book today as our National Urban League president, Mark H. Morial, is a part and was a part of the organizing of the anniversary of the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. So last week we had urban leaguers from all over the country again join the March on Washington to continue. This year, as he said, this is the next phase of the civil rights movement. We are still marching for economic growth, jobs, and equity. And as we continue to look at that, when you think about Central Florida, it is really important here. While the state of Florida reports a 6.8 unemployment rate, we find it vastly different in our community. And if you stratify that data and take a look at it, you're really looking at data that reflects 18 to 25-year-olds double-digit unemployment. And I see it impacting a 17-year-old that lives in my home. He's 17 years old and has been applying all over the region to try to find a job. His impediment, he's too young. See, things are shifting, and that's where the Urban League continues to educate and be an advocate with our local government, with our federal government. I have the privilege of sitting on the National Urban League's Jobs Task Force. We directly interact with labor, and most recently we hosted the acting secretary here in Washington Shores to talk about the President of the United States move to bring minimum wage to $9.15 an hour versus $7.75 an hour.
Right.
And a lot of people say, well, Allie, what does that mean really? What that means is families still can put food on the table. That means families can also take care of life-saving medications that in a lot of cases you have to make a choice between one or the other. To bring it home, really, for a single mom, it may be the difference of repairing the vehicle and still staying in my own apartment, or riding the bus, or being able to have to move back home with mom and dad while I get a restart, because $7.75 doesn't seem to go that much, especially in a region where we have a living wage requirement that's in excess of $10.50 an hour. And I think the Urban League and President Morial and all of us are pushing that. $9.15 an hour doesn't get you to living wage yet, but it gets you well upon the path. That as you continue to grow and move people forward, they have an opportunity to get to a living wage. Lastly, in a very elongated answer to your question, the Urban League continues to stay focused on job creation by the small business incubation of helping small businesses get started or restart. But we also look at how do we bring skills to young people to help them move ahead. And I'm so proud of our team at the Urban League this year. Our Center for Workforce Innovation through our GED program. A couple years ago, we only had 6 students that completed that GED. This year, I'm proud to tell you that our staff helped 39 students complete their GED. And, you know, hats off to our staff, because those 39 people now have an on-ramp to education. And Whitney and Young stressed that education is the key to how you bring about equalizing wages in the employment market. Everyone may not go off to a 4-year university, but technical training, being able to be a part of learning how to have skills like firefighting, EMT, but also learning some of the services trades can help lead people towards incomes that have sustained families. And I am proud of our team and proud of our effort, but that's a glimpse at the Urban League and what we're doing around jobs. With the March on Washington, we just echoed again that clarion call that we need to be able to have people employed, doing good things in our community. Way we take down crime in our community is giving ample opportunity to our youth and young adults to be able to be ably employed. You know, it's funny, when I was 15, I went to work at Burger King. And I think they were still singing the jingle, "Have It Your Way."
Okay.
But it was a job that allowed me to have money in my pocket, began to teach me financial literacy and responsibility. And the Urban League is still in that business today. Since Whitney's leadership, that 50-year march, we continue that march, but we're marching in the direction of equalization. We're marching in the direction of making sure that we're healthy, so that we can go out and keep the jobs that we have. And then we're also making sure that education is paramount. On September 5th, the Urban League will hold an education summit on educational choice in the black community. Again, not advocating a direction, but making sure that you're aware of what your options are when we're preparing our youth for educational opportunities, as Charles and Shelley has alluded to?
You know, that's so important. As you tied in jobs, the mission of the Urban League, and education, and I'd like to have you know, our second guest, Irene, talk a little bit about that connection. I know that you're very involved in upcoming, you know, super hot football game, okay, between Mississippi State and what's that other college again?
Florida A&M University.
Okay. I already have some rattlers hissing at me out there already.
Getting ready to strike.
Exactly.
But one of the things, and first of all, I have to correct you because my husband, who is listening, would not appreciate the Boyd as the last name. It's now Newton, and it's been for the last 2 years.
I'm behind,
Definitely correct.
I'm behind the flag. Okay. So, Mrs. Newton.
Yeah, we want to fix that. I do want to go home tonight.
Okay.
Okay. To a pleasant environment. But to speak to, and I want
I got your name spelled right.
Okay.
Yeah, I got Boyd.
to take it off. Let it go.
Okay, Newton. Okay.
N-E-W-T-O-N.
Okay, we got it.
But to kind of tie in, you know, the MEAC SWAC Challenge, though it is a football game, and you're talking about creating jobs and economic development and all these other things. But one of the things that I was thinking about when I thought about the March on Washington was the time period and what was prevalent during that time. During that time, I remember growing up in a community where we had black businesses. Where our school teachers taught our black children, where we had a pride in our community because we served each other in our community. We were self-serving people because we served ourselves.
Right.
We don't have that anymore because we're now spread out all over the place. You know, and the communities that are left are not communities where we have businesses. So I'm really concerned about that, and because of that, I am an entrepreneur. I do own my own business, and I do get an opportunity from time to time to hire people. Well, guess what? My first priority is to hire my own. So I make sure that I'm allowing that dollar that I'm able to give that person to be generated back into that community, wherever that community is that they live, which is very important. And we're not doing that, and we need to do that more often. It's not just about education, it's about creating opportunities from the top. We need to start employing ourselves, which means that we have to step out and get out of that corporate ideology where I need to go work for somebody and start understanding that we need to work for ourselves. We need to take the chance of failure because we may just succeed. If we succeed, then we can start creating jobs to feed the communities that we're from.
Well, you know, I want to share with you what you just said, because just talking with our friend Ken, we had the conversation a while back, and he said while he was in school, somebody lied to him. He said, somebody told me, well, if I go finish high school, go to college, and then if I finish college, I'm going to find me a job, then I'm going to be successful and live happily ever after.
Absolutely.
And he said, they lied to me.
That was the story they told me too.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
and
yes,
look,
yes.
don't go to the HBCU. We were talking about that. Don't go to the HBCU, go to the other school so you'll have a better opportunity. But now what I found
It's the
after
HBCUs.
matriculating through my school, I went and found myself at the HBCU, which was I graduated from University of Texas, but I found myself over at Houston Tillotson, which was where I made my connection with my people so that I could be further inspired to continue doing what I was doing at University of Texas. Having said all of that, with the MEAC SWAC, one of the things that I find has been very, very good, I don't know that Disney planned it. I don't know that it was part of the ESPN objective. But when they called me and said, will you find some jumpy things so that your children could have something to do before the game, I'm saying you're bringing a game into this community. So the community should benefit from the game. That means our businesses should have access to having access to that money.
Exactly.
And we should also be able to bring those jumpy things from people who have those jumpy things, which means that now I can pay them for those services. And so I saw it as an opportunity to bring people who do barbecue, and people who have leisure companies and the recruiting arms from both the schools to all participate in the tailgate.
Okay.
So
And
that's
she's
how
done
that
a
got developed.
remarkable job with that, because
go ahead.
I also sit on this executive committee, even though I'm running like crazy. But even the marketing is
Absolutely.
by a member of our community.
Absolutely.
Which
Okay.
shows the diversity that if you want to reach our community, sometimes you need to have the intelligence of what touches our community.
Exactly.
And I just have to applaud you in that, because the MEAC SWAC, having been involved with it while at Disney, and then also being involved with it now at the Urban League, it brings opportunities. And we need to tell the story. One, the MEAC and the SWAC Challenge is all about, again, education.
Exactly.
These
It
are
really
student
is.
athletes
That's correct.
Okay.
excelling and performing on a football field.
Yes.
But what we really need to be telling is our young people, these are 2 universities that
That's
you can
correct.
aspire to attend.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then with other organizations like that are here, like the BBIF, learn how to build a business. Learn how to fund a business.
That's correct.
Get the technical assistance to write your business plan. Because I, too, grew up in a community where my first job, being from here, but following the great migratory path of Stanford to Rochester, New York.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Okay.
In Rochester, New York, my first job was cleaning windows at a funeral home.
Okay.
Okay.
Millard E. Latimer and Sons.
All right.
That long after the gentleman who started that black-owned funeral home, it is still there when I went home and visited just a few short months ago, and still employing people from the community, and still making jobs in that community. And we had to get back to that. The corner store needs to be owned by us.
Absolutely.
We need to
Absolutely.
have opportunities to
The
get
gas
lending.
station.
And that's where, exactly, especially around fuel. When you take a look at what being a part of the National Urban League movement today and being this March on Washington, it is all about entrepreneurship. It is. We have entrepreneurial centers across the nation run by Urban Leagues.
Yes.
Now, locally, we have an empowerment zone where Coleman's Pizza, don't know if you've been there to have some wings or pizza yet,
Okay.
but Coleman Pizza are people who have come through that with a coach that we partnered with, Cora Miles Jefferson, to help them re-engineer their business plan, to be able to go and open in a location where they did the right negotiations and got the rents at the right prices. Because when you're starting business, the hardest thing to do is to stay in business.
Yes, it is.
You know,
It
they will
truly
give you a
is.
statistic that 95% of small businesses fail.
Yeah,
But you know
yes.
what the deal is? It's not because of economics.
Right.
It's not because of lack of money. It's because of lack of community support.
Yes, indeed. And we have
don't
to
support each other.
Okay,
and
that's
and that was
so
the other.
important.
That's the other part.
Yes.
Is that when we were talking about community back in the 60s and 70s, we supported each other. That's what I was talking about when I said we served each other. We served ourselves.
Yes, we do.
And so it was an environment that was conducive to building and mentorship. We had the older people talking to the younger people about
yes.
what they could possibly or potentially do. Now, the story may have, go and get a corporate job and instead of doing it the way that I did it. But now that we know that that was a mistake, we have an opportunity to fix that.
Right. Well, let me segue on that, and that is that the way that I'm looking at it is that, Irene, you're going into the corporate world was not such a mistake. It was a preparation. Okay.
Yes, it was.
And,
That's
and
for sure.
And so, just as Charles was saying
Yeah.
that, when his friend went to college and said that they lied to him, I think in being in that world and seeing what the corporate world, really is about, I think allows, our community to see that is not the be all and the end all.
Exactly.
That there is something
Exactly.
more.
Exactly.
And that you can aspire beyond that, so that so that some of our young people who may see their opportunities in that venue can also then see that beyond that, because if you really take a look at, and both of you have been in corporate life, so that you know that you are never indispensable.
That's true.
No, you're not.
That's true.
Okay.
That is
I
the
think
truth.
when you
Everyone
look
is
at corporate
replaceable.
life, leverage it as a further learning platform.
Yeah, I have to agree with you.
Learn how to run the multi-million-dollar budgets, but take that skill and then transfer it.
Exactly.
I had the privilege at the National Urban League conference in Philadelphia to meet Michael Rashid. Michael Rashid runs a $6 billion multinational corporation called AmeriHealth Caritas.
Right.
But when I had a chance to meet this CEO, African American, who quoted Dr. King as being one of the first to talk about healthcare being affordable and accessible as a key for the black community. I pulled him to the side and I said, he says, "You from Orlando?" I said, "Yes." He says, "I used to sell little trinkets on Paramore in the 70s.
Wow. For our listeners, Paramore is the hood in Orlando.
And so when you think about it, it's not where you start, it's where you finish.
Yes.
And so if you can leverage a corporate knowledge base to help you go start your own business, and you know, I think about some of the gentlemen and some of the young ladies here in town, like Lindell Mims Construction. I think about Derek Wallace Construction. I think about young people coming up like Jaja Wade with Ace Construction Management. Now that's all around the construction trades, but these people are holding down not only jobs here, but they're expanding and their businesses are here and employing people here, but they're employing people across the country as they win contracts. And we had to teach our young people, and I think that would be following what Whitney, one of his most memorable remarks in my life is that he says, pity the person who is not ready for the opportunity when the opportunity presents itself.
Yes.
Okay.
And learn to say yes.
And learn.
We say no so often to opportunities or potential opportunities because of fear. And that's our biggest barrier to continuing forward is being afraid. Take that step. You know, I will never forget when I was leaving Brown & Brown Insurance in Daytona Beach, unhappy as a human resources professional, had gotten, you know, a senior professional in human resources, doing really well, and I'm extremely unhappy. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I wasn't happy. I couldn't make my employer happy. My employees were not happy. What was one thing that made everybody satisfied? That was the events that we did for the employees. That's what I said, okay, well, I'm going to do something that I find fun, that everybody around me has found fun, and I'm going to make that into a business. Did not have a clue how, when, what, but I tell you what, it was the tenacity, the desire, and just moving forward one day at a time that led me to my very first big event, which was with General Motors, believe it or not. Their Minority Dealers Association. And they called me to do one thing, and that was to find something that was indigenous to Orlando, Florida, and have it there for their gala. I said, okay. I got an opportunity to find that. So do you need a band? So do you need lighting?
Right.
Who's going to handle your decorations? I started upselling my services. Before I knew it, I did their entire gala. That was my very first gala. So that's how I got it started, but I had to pass out of my own sphere of fear.
Yes. Okay.
I had to take a chance that I had never taken before and leave me behind because me was saying no. Okay, the opportunity was saying yes.
Exactly.
And I had to say yes to the opportunity.
You know, that's such an important task because as a psychologist, I deal with a lot of young people. And in fact, just before coming here tonight, I was talking to a young lady. And I said to her, I said, what is your dream? You know, you know, because she said, well, I'm not sure if I want to go to college. I'm not sure what I want to do, etc. And she started telling me, she said, well, I thought I might want to be a cosmetologist, but, you know, I'm not sure about that. And I'm thinking that I want to be someone who helps people in the community and maybe do a homeless shelter, etc. And I said to her, and because we didn't have a lot of time, I said to her, I said, you know, the one thing that's important is that keep the dream. Okay? And as Dr. Martin Luther King talked about having a dream, I think that is so important. And I wanted to get Shelley in because I know you deal with a lot of youth. And one of the things that I find that for me, you know, as an older generation that has lost a few buds here in staying, you know, ahead of you know, some of the challenges that we've had. one of the things that concerns me a lot is that many of our youth don't know how to dream, don't know what what a dream could be.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you would want to comment on that.
I think that is probably a pretty. Their dreams are based more on what they see on television and what they see in media. They want to get everything fast. I want to be the NFL player. I want to be an NBA player. I want to be the big man on campus kind of thing. And so what we find with the kids that we deal with is you may spend a couple of hours with them during the week, but they still have to go home.
That's right.
And so the environment that they're surrounded with, that's why I like what we do at the Urban League. It's holistic. You've got to look at the entire family because you need to know what they're going through. When I listen to our youth counselors, I applaud them because there is no way I could do that. I don't have that level of patience, and I know this about myself. You have to be honest. You have to kind of be honest with where you are, know what your limitations are. I have 3 little girls, and I know I will never be a homeschooler mom, that kind of thing. So, but they look at what's out there, and that's what they want. I even see that with my little girls. This is my crush or whatever. The 9-year-old is talking about crushes now. But they look at what's out there on television, and then there's nobody guiding them. So they stick on to our youth counselors because they're an image. We had a young man give one of our past employees, but he was our youth manager at the time. He looked forward to seeing Mr. Lee because it was the only male influence he had. He was in a household full of women. So their personal joke had to do with the sports section of the newspaper because they would get to have that discussion. So here is a young man looking at our youth manager who is at the time was going to school working on his doctorate. He was an athlete, former athlete, and he's very involved with the youth. So this was a role model in front of them. So they don't have role models that they can look to kind of grow up and say, well, I want to do this, or that's something that I want to do. Then once you go to school, you're right. Your friend was right. We did get lied to. I mean, I know I look young. Don't be mistaken. I'm 39, but I do say the same thing. We were lied to. I did everything right. I was an AB student in high school, got my scholarships, went to college. I went to Florida State. Didn't do the HBCU thing because I didn't feel like that was for me. You wanted to have that more universal experience. And I'm like, okay, now I graduated. I have the degree, got my master's. Where's my job? That was the first thing is, where's my job? And so you kind of go through that. So yes, you do need to be able to think and push through and make opportunity for yourself.
One of the things you just mentioned was the fact that students need role models. We don't push our young people to volunteer. Number one, to put them in environments where they can learn what it takes to get to the next level. Number two, we don't mentor our children. We don't take the time to say, look, this is what it takes. This is what you do. This is what I've had to do. So we don't tell our story. And our story is extremely important. We talk about all the people, Whitney and Martin and all these other people and their story. But we need to start telling our story to our children so that they can understand what it has taken for us to mature to the point where we are. The struggles that we've had to face, as well as our successes. And once we start sharing that with our children, then they understand more the human condition, the more human ability, and what it really requires. It does take you getting up early in the morning when you don't feel like it. It does take you listening when you don't want to hear. It takes a whole lot of things that you think just because you're listening to the TV and it's instantaneous. It's a process, but we're not teaching the process. We're not mentoring them to understand the process.
Well, we're teaching them to do better than we did, and we want them to have better, but we forget that
it was a process.
Exactly, it was that process.
Exactly.
We don't want, kids now don't want to start and be the receptionist. They don't want to start in the kitchen. They don't want to do all that. That's beneath them.
Exactly.
And then your student who was talking about cosmetology made me think of a friend of mine who we were in college, and that was something she was great at. But The issue was it wasn't going to have doctor or 3 letters behind it. It was going to be PhD.
Okay.
She couldn't stand the sight of blood. She's being a pre-med major. She passed out at the thought of going to the nurse's office. She would pass out, and we all looked at her like, we pay people to go get our nails done and
Why
all
can't we
these
pay
other
you?
things. Why would we not pay you? And you love this. You
Yes.
are great at this.
Right.
You need to give up that particular, because that was not a dream. That was a misunderstanding or whatever you want to call it, that I have to be a doctor or a lawyer
Well,
to be
Carter
successful.
Woodson, way back, as you all will remember, talked about the miseducation of
Of
the
the
Negro.
Negro.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Yes.
and I would say that more of our young people
Are miseducated.
need to read that. And
I
to
would
listen
love to
that.
walk into a black dry cleaners.
Mm.
I would love to go to a black person who's pumping or has a gas station. I would love that. That's what I grew up with. I'd love to go to the corner grocery store and know that he knows my name and he knows my uncle and he knows my grandmother. I would love that, but we don't have that anymore.
There was a gentleman that I don't forget where it was, but he was at one of the events, and he was a guest speaker, and he's out of Tallahassee, and he's been working at the Capitol for a very long time, and he shined shoes.
Okay.
Okay, so he's been shining shoes for a very long time, but when the students heard about him shining shoes, they were turned off by the idea of shining shoes. So, but when later on, as he started to talk, he talked about the connections that he had made up in Tallahassee. He talked about the people that he knew, which led to his chain of shoe shining
Shoe shining.
at the airport
Okay.
and all
Okay.
places around the state,
Okay.
which meant ching ching. But now they could
Now they
understand.
Now they
listen.
understand.
Now they listen.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But the fact that he said, "Well, I shine shoes,"
So he's the McDonald's of shoe shining.
exactly, and he very well off.
Okay.
Exactly.
There you go.
And I think one of my favorite quotes, and I can't attribute it to the author, but I'll give you the quote, is sometimes you have to do what you don't want to do so you can do what you want to do.
Want to do. Absolutely.
And I think, when you can take a skill and turn it into from a hobby into a profession, a lot of people look at my career as you have, Doctor, and say, well, you've done all this, and you got this. Well, my love for computers was I was building computers on the side. Then I found out how to turn that into a profession and go get a degree.
Okay.
And we have so much talent in our community.
Yes.
And I want to go back to something that you remarked on, in that we need to read more.
Yes.
I read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
Okay.
And a lot of people say, well, how does that relate? Well, you have to program yourself. See, a lot of times we sit in front of the television, which Shelley and staff will know I constantly harp on this. Television is programming.
That is
Yes.
correct.
And what you allow that television to teach you or show you becomes your reality.
That is correct.
And if you only are seeing people who don't look like you doing certain professions, then you don't see yourself doing it.
Doing that. That's
Exactly.
correct.
The reason I started dabbling in technology, and we keep talking about science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, was because a Xerox executive in Rochester came to my 6th grade class with a box, a light bulb, and a rubber hose. And he says, we're going to show light in here. And he turned off all the lights. So, we didn't have cool words like the kids have like now, like really. We just looked at him in total amazement of what he's talking about. But when he did, we were actually seeing the first generation fiber optic cable. But what was more impressive to me was I was seeing a black male as an executive inside Xerox as an engineer. So when I would later go on and pursue a technology degree in computer science, that was my role model.
Okay.
That was, I can do it too. And we have to continue to do that in our communities. And,
Absolutely.
when you talk about dreaming, and this kind of alludes to the book, I believe dreams, when you break it down, it's a mnemonic that says dreams realized, evidenced, and manifested. It's desires.
Oh, you got to say that one more time. That is so
Desire,
good.
dreams are desires realized, evidenced, and manifested. When you take a look at that, if you can desire it, and then you can dream about it, you can come up with a plan of how to achieve it.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And in listening to your story about being an HR person with Brown and Brown, and you know, I can remember being at Disney when you had the, you know, you talk about terms of sticky floor, glass ceiling.
Okay.
Where you going in and you're just doing the drudgery, and you're not happy, the employer's not happy, and it's the happiest place on earth. But what I liked about Disney is it gave you a platform where you could actually change careers. So sometimes we had to look and find out what does make us happy, see if there's an avenue there to do it, and then if there is an avenue, explore it.
Right.
But ultimately, isn't it? I think about some of the people who have been at Disney and then gone off to do their own things. Anybody ever stay at a Rosen Hotel? Harris Rosen started at Disney.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
But Harris Rosen
Yes, he did.
went out and found a way to create his own reality.
Yes, he did.
And when he created his own reality, I don't think there's a hotel you can't go to on our drive he's not connected to,
He's not connected
other
to.
than the Peabody. But
Absolutely.
and we got to have young men and women think about that. But you want to read about someone that's a hotelier? Read about the two brothers out of St. Louis who own multiple hotels all across the country, and they write about it. You know, but I think it's to your point about miseducation of the Negro. They often say that if you want to keep things from somebody, put it in writing and close it.
Well, see, we don't even read on the internet. That's the unfortunate thing. We
look on the internet is true.
We look at no, but there are some relevant. There is relevant information that is on the internet that if we take advantage of it, we can actually learn from it. But that's not where we spend our time.
No,
we'd rather see about the Kardashians and north and northeast of west, and you know, Beyonce and what they're doing. That's what they spend their time with.
Yeah, the largest consumers of social media and technology are the African American and Latino community.
Yes, it is.
But the ones who pale in comparison in terms of producing technology or leveraging technology as owners or creators of technology are the African Americans and Latinos.
Exactly.
The Urban League here was a part of a study for the FCC commissioned by Time Warner Cable, in that it was talking about bridging the broadband gap. And the way to help bridge the broadband gap is we are the largest consumers.
Yes.
We now must become the largest creators.
Exactly.
So when I hear about people creating apps, and I had a chance to go to Spelman and meet the Spellbots, and these young ladies enter if you don't know their story, please look it up. But briefly, these young ladies were English and science and math majors. They were not robotic or artificial intelligence majors. But a young enterprising professor went there with them and started a club called the Spellbots. And they would actually program artificial intelligence robots to do simple activities, or such as go out and play soccer and pass the ball to each other. Well, in Japan, this is a huge undertaking that they spend years getting their teams ready to compete. These young ladies came together and in a year or two were competing on an international level.
Wow.
So we have the talent.
We have the talent.
Yes.
And what really moved me is in 2008, I met one young lady. She says, I just wrote my first app for the iPhone. We didn't even have iPhone 4 by then.
Right. Okay.
But she was writing apps while in college. So when we're at those universities and we have those opportunities, leverage that as an opportunity to learn and do your best. And, you know, maybe you're not destined for corporate America. Maybe you're destined to start your own business. And I just look at those stories and try to tell anecdotal stories so that young people can see themselves and start programming so that they can go out and do exactly like what we were talking about, live their dreams. It was interesting. I was talking with a person yesterday, and they said, Allie, I asked a group of young people, what are your dreams? They were like, you know what? My dream is just to be able to get through day to day.
Well, you know, and I understand that. And I felt the same way, even doing what I'm doing with the event planning. And I have to put a little plug in here for the tours, because I do cultural tours here. Good. And it's not just African American tours. I take them to Winter Park. I take them to Claremont. And now I've had to learn the history not only of my people, but of the people of the Central Florida area. So when I have been able to understand that my role now with this business is to become an ambassador for change. An ambassador for knowledge. An ambassador. So when I've got people on my vehicle, whether that's in my car, on a 52 passenger bus, I have the opportunity to bring some consciousness. And one of the things that I'm asking them to do is to pay attention. Pay attention, because in that history, in those stories, I keep talking about our story, in those stories is your story in the making. If you don't have a direction, if you don't know which way to go, think about those people who have created something out of nothing, because that's their story. And hopefully I'm, inspiring some other people through the historical information that is given to them, and the access and the discussions that we have within the vehicle to inspire them to think just a little bit further, dig a little deeper, and go a little farther.
I think about the highwaymen when you bring that.
Yes, exactly.
These artists are celebrated internationally.
And
Yes.
the highwaymen, they didn't even know who the highwaymen were
Right.
in the Central Florida area until we did the arts festival in the little town of Oakland,
Yes.
Florida. The highwaymen, they knew them in Fort Pierce. And I'm going to tell you how they came here. I happened to be traveling down the road in Oakland, just kind of looking around, stopped and started talking to this guy who knew the author of the Highwaymen book.
Wow.
And he said, Oreen, would you like for me to have him call you? And I said, yeah, that would be a great thing. That's how the Highwaymen got to Central Florida.
Wow.
As more of a group of people that could be acknowledged as
Wow.
historical.
Yes.
Right.
Now, the whites knew who they were.
Yes, exactly.
They were buying their artwork.
Right.
We just had no access to them because we just didn't know.
No.
Wow.
So
Exactly.
that's how they got started here in Central
That's
Florida.
amazing,
Wow.
because I think I've seen them celebrated and had the privilege of being a part of the Onyx Awards that celebrated them and present them with an award, because when you look at it and you hear their story,
It's awesome.
it was a story of survival.
It
Yes.
It was a story of entrepreneurship.
was.
It was some creative painting, because what they did in a matter of minutes and brushstrokes turned into this impressive collection of art.
Yes.
But it was also a matter of mentorship, because they reached each other.
Yes.
They taught each other. They shared with each other. And that's why there's a centralized theme in what they do, is because they actually learned from each other. And that's what we really need to start doing, is learning from each other. I don't care how uneducated you are in terms of book knowledge. You have wisdom.
Absolutely.
You've been through some things. And those are the
Absolutely.
things that we need to start sharing with each other.
Great. One of the things that we have a little bit of time left that I'd like to have everybody just give some opinions on, and that is a lot of, and we've talked about this a bit, a lot of the young people don't know the struggles that we have gone, the stories that we've had, and not just the struggles, but the triumphs. And I think that all three of you have mentioned some of those both struggles and triumphs. Now, if you were to give our young people a one tidbit that might help them from your life or your story, what do you think you'd want to share that may make a difference? And Oreen, I love your term, an ambassador of change, because I believe that we each have that opportunity to be an ambassador of change. So I'd like you to just comment on that a bit. What would you like those young people to know?
For me, it would be find what your passion is. Find out what your passion is, and don't ever give up on it. So as we were talking about, have your dream, and you said don't let go of that dream. Have that passion, because what does happen is you do start working, and you start just trying to get by and do day to day. So even though you may have a mentor or someone in your life to guide you, what happens is you kind of get stuck in that rut, and you got to come up out of it. So you need to have something to hold on to that is yours, not what society tells you it should be, but what is yours. What are you passionate about? What makes you get up every day? What would you do for free? Sometimes, what is that? What would you do for free that makes you happy? Because ultimately you have to be happy.
Yes.
You've got to be happy. You want to be successful, but success is not just measured in dollars.
Exactly.
And that's what I think young people need to realize.
It's interesting, as you were talking about the importance of being happy, and I think that even in our Constitution, it talks
Yeah.
about the
Life,
pursuit
liberty,
of
and
life,
the pursuit of
liberty, and
happiness.
happiness. So that is truly
Yep.
part
Yep.
of the American dream.
Yes.
And again, so many of our young people, I believe, have forgotten, that
We
that
each have
that
a
is a
purpose.
part of it. Yes.
You just have to figure out what that purpose is, and you may not figure it out till you're 90.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a journey, and you got to, you have a purpose, and what you're going through. Everybody's a mirror for somebody else,
Okay.
and you have
Very-
to remember that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I had a very oppressive grandmother who believed that children were to be seen and not heard.
Oh, how many times have we heard that?
And so she was very strong. And yes, I had abilities, I had skills, I had talents, but I was afraid because she instilled in me such a fear of her persona that I feared everybody.
Yeah.
So my nugget that I would leave, which would kind of segue off of after you find what your
Yeah.
purpose is to persevere
Yes.
beyond your fear.
Yeah. Yeah. I like
Because
that.
that's what I had to do. I had to say, look, I am wonderfully made. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
All right.
And I had to really get that here, and all over before I could take the next step without the fear. Because that was my biggest freeze zone. What if?
Right.
Can I? What if they? Those
You had all the reasons why you couldn't do it.
all the reasons that I couldn't. And she
Right.
made that, she stood there with the stick telling me I couldn't. But yes, and the one reason that my company is called Can Do is because Philippians 4:13 says,
Right.
I can do
Do
all things
things.
through Christ who strengthens me.
All right.
I didn't mean to preach,
Very
but
good.
I
No.
I know that was a good one. It was good.
And,
It's
and,
true, but it is
and then I
true.
have to say, Reed, that it is right in the center of what we are about, with the journey. Because as a people, as human beings, but particularly as a people, we are spiritual people.
Yes.
And one of the things that we all know that we have been to those places where our backs are against the wall, where we don't know where our
And the
next
only thing
dollar
we
is
do
coming
is fall
from.
on those knees.
Exactly.
We went to $1. I stayed at a dime.
Exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
And sometimes the only thing that we could do is just, send up that prayer,
Yeah.
and that has sustained us. So I think that is so important. One of the things I want to talk about, as you mentioned fear. Now, see, fear worked for me in a slightly different way. Okay, and it was my father, but my father said to me, boy. Said, you better get those grades because, okay, and I still got a lot of relatives, so they'll tell you that I'm not lying, okay? And he said, like, you can do what you want to do, but you don't bring no shame in this house, and you don't bring no good grades, okay? And he would preface it, when, I would start to kind of wonder and whatnot, and that famous saying, that, well, I brought you into this world,
take you out.
I will take you out. And see, back in my day,
They really were trying to take you
exactly, exactly.
You
Right.
couldn't call 911.
Right.
No, you can't call these
Well, you
jobs.
dialed.
No, you
Thank
see,
you.
Take the
wait,
services.
I tried that with my mother one
listen,
time.
my father
She
was
said,
one of
okay.
those folks would hand me the telephone and tell me if there was
Dial.
911 at that
Yes.
time, call who you want
no
to.
problem.
And when they come,
There will be
they
a
can
reason
take
for
you-
them to be here. Yes,
exactly.
yes.
But, Allie, go ahead.
I think the only thing I would add is stand in the face of adversity.
Yes.
When you think you can't, you can.
Mm-hmm.
When you think you won't, you will. And when you apply yourself, you got to have that determination deep down. I love what you said. Persevere in the face of fear.
Yes.
When you think about, and tying this back to the March on Washington, when you think about Dr. King and others, they didn't purposely wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a civil rights leader.
That's right.
They didn't purpose to one day just stand up and say, I'm going to own a business or I'm going to go get a degree. They stood in the face of adversity. And what I mean by that, when you see great challenge, there's great reward on the other side.
Yes, exactly.
When your naysayers come at you sometimes and tell you what you can't do, mostly family, look to the other side and see what you can do. And I love Philippians 4:13. Because that is my strength when I think about you know, when you talk about my eyes will look to the hills because I know where my help comes from. We have to stay prayed up as spiritual beings. You alluded to the book, so I'm going to talk about it. A little shameless plug.
Okay.
It's called Rekindling the Passion, Restoring the Joy and Purpose to Your Life. I found in corporate America, I got lost chasing the dollars
Chasing the dollar.
rather than
Yes.
chasing the happiness and the fulfillment.
Yes.
And so what I started to do was journal. I want to encourage people to read and write. Start journaling. Write your plan for where you want to go. When you start to think about the things that you want to do in life, put a roadmap together. You know, because the failure to planning is key.
Right.
If you fail to plan, you have
Plan to fail. Exactly.
and what you have to do is put that together. So I would say, but by having people stand in the face of adversity, and right here, I love what you said about we have our own history in Central Florida. I applaud Dr. King and I applaud Congressman Lewis and others who have stood in the face of some real adversity. But we have had our Groveland Four.
Absolutely.
We have had our challenges where people in Oviedo got knocked in the head standing and trying to move people along towards history of equality rather than one where it was singularly in purpose. So I would say stand. When you can stand up and take a look at yourself in the mirror and say, despite what everybody else think, I love myself. I still can move forward. I still can achieve what I believe I can achieve, and go right back to Philippians 4:13. And I just say amen.
All right.
Because through Christ Jesus, who strengthens me, you can
Yes.
do all things.
Exactly.
I think when people look at me, they see a suit and a shirt and a tie. But I'm a little boy that walked down dirt roads in Oviedo, Florida, before there was ever a Boys Club Boulevard. It was Division Street. And Division stood exactly for what it meant. But when you walk down those roads, I go back there now to get grounded, to understand that I was a little country boy whose teachers and whose parents told them, you can do anything that you put your mind to.
Yes.
Just put your mind to it. So I would tell them, when you look at people and you see the stars or you see people walking around in a suit, pull them to the side for that mentoring and that coaching. Because they may tell you a story that I sold trinkets on Paramore Avenue while I am now the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And when I met Michael Rashid, he was as humble as anybody, and was reminded of his struggle. And everybody should know there will be struggle.
Yes, exactly.
But there will be triumph on the other side.
All right.
But there's something else, Ali, that we have to, that is paramount to all these components. Because as we get, we should always give.
Yes, indeed.
We can't continue to be a receiver if we don't pour back out. So, you know, as we get all these wonderful things, as we get all these blessings, as we get all this
have to give
encouragement, as we get all this motivation, as we get all these skills, talents, and abilities, we still have to give. And that's what we're not doing enough of. Those of us in corporate America, those of us who've made the plateau and made the success of our lives, we need to start giving back so that we're preparing the way for others. One of the things that I find as an indictment of us as older people is we don't do what our older people did for us. We don't give our young people an opportunity. We are still in their way. We need to be getting over to the side and getting ready to chill and retire and say, I'm going to give you and pour into you what I got, so that you can succeed. And that's an indictment on all of us who are older for not doing what my Bible says. We're supposed to teach the young ones. If you got a young buck warrior, you're supposed to pour into that young buck warrior so that he knows how to trap the bear. There's bears out here, y'all.
All right.
We need to survive.
Yes.
Women, I need to teach the women so that I can teach them how to be a good wife, how to be a good mother. Because you see, as teachers, we have all of this world on our shoulders because we teach the boys.
Yes, exactly.
We teach the girls. So we got the basis of everything underneath our wings as teachers.
Yes.
Okay, so, you know, I just want to add that little piece. It's time to give back, give back, give back, give back.
And we actually have run out of time.
Oh,
No,
my
we didn't.
goodness.
No. But I wanted you to talk about the MEAC SWAC in the game, but we ran out of time. You got to
It is what it is.
Real fast about the game because we're actually over, but go ahead.
Okay, the MEAC SWAC is going to be Sunday, September 1st, and we're going to start with our morning praise service with the Experience Church and Pastor Derek McCrae. Then we're going to have our Great Heart and Soul tailgate party featuring Miss Kiara Kiki Sheard as our guest with collard green cook-off and a lot of wonderful things that are going on. Fastest texture contest, fastest drummer. Come on out, make a little money, get a smartphone. Then we're going to have then we're going to have our game at 11:45 that is going to pit Mississippi Valley State University against Florida A&M University. It's going to be wonderful, and of course FAMU band is back, and they'll be on the field at halftime with Mississippi Valley State.
All right.
Okay, Dr. Robinson, you need to close.
Okay. And again, family, thank you for tuning in tonight. Our panel, Mr. Ali Braswell, Ms. Oreen Boyd Newton, okay, and Ms. Shelley Minnis are individuals who are giving back. And we hope that our broadcast, the words that we had to share tonight, the thoughts that we had to share will carry through to those young people in our community that we're trying to get to. That's what the journey is about. Thank you for journeying with us tonight.
Yes, our pleasure.
We will be calling on you in the future to journey again. And thank you so much for your words and your wisdom.
Thank you.
And with that, family, we're closing out tonight. Next week, we're going to be talking about another one of the hot topics in our community. September is National Alcohol and Drug Recovery Month. We're going to be talking about how such things as the war on drugs, alcohol, and drugs affect our community. So don't forget, Friday night, 7 p.m., tune in and get educated. Good night.